grass doesn't grow on busy streets.
I thought you had to take that.
That means you're clever, I think. Well, that's what it means.
I'll take that. Thank you.
That's what my granddad always used to say.
I suppose.
Could I ask you all just to press the left-hand button of your microphone, please, because I don't think they've been switched on correctly.
Green.
Is yours the left-hand one? Yes, if you leave it, that green light will go out and it'll be ready for the start time.
Okay.
Thank you.
I leave mine on. Let's see.
Switch them on so
Yeah.
that should be fine.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. It's on.
Good afternoon, everybody. Before we start, I need to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Do we have any apologies for absence?
No apologies.
Do we have any disposable pecuniary interest? Apologies, I'm Peggy Buller, chair of this committee that's speaking now. Minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of August. Any comments? I'll take it. Have somebody propose and second? Proposed by Claire, seconded by David. Thank you. We don't have any public, but we have 3 member questions. Councillor Hardy, would you like to start?
Yes, sorry, you caught me unawares. First of all, thank you for the reply. As a supplementary question, and
Can you put your mic on?
oh yeah, sorry.
Is it going?
Yeah, there we go. Right. First of all, thank you for the reply. I'll try and make this as simple as possible. I'm asking if I note that the workers from early years have gone on to work with the youth services, and you say that they're all within the same department, i.e. they're all early health workers. But are you saying that due to the transfer of early health workers, there will be a reduction of early health workers, distinguishing of course between early health workers and those that work with youth? Or are you saying that those that have transferred to the services will actually have a foot in both camps? In other words, they'll be working with younger children as they have done, but also they'll be working with youth within the youth service as well.
Okay, thank you, Chair. If you'd like me to answer that. I'm assuming that everybody has had the response.
Yeah.
Okay. So to be clear, we have recruited into the youth service provision, so the detached youth provision, 3 workers from the early help team, and at the time, and they still are, trained and experienced youth workers. So we're talking about early help here, and youth workers, not early years. Early years is a very different aspect of work that does indeed work with younger children, but not young people. So what we have done is transfer those staff who were probably underutilised with their experience into something that is very in line with their experience. We were going through a restructure. People will know that we've reviewed our early help offer and the resources that go with that, and inevitably that involved a restructure. So clearly this has worked out very well for those individuals who have stayed within the profession that they were trained in, whilst allowing the early help offer to grow as per the structure that we proposed.
Thank you for the answer. I apologise for my confusion. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor, oh yeah, Councillor Evans, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As the meeting is being streamed and a number of parents may well be watching this, I will read my question out. Recently, it has come to my notice that a number of schools in Shropshire are being badly affected by COVID amongst its primary school pupils, with consequential effects on numbers attending that school. There seems to be conflicting advice from the Department of Education and Public Health. Can I and many others be informed what is the advice being given out to pupils if A, a member of your household has been diagnosed as having COVID, B, a brother or sister has been diagnosed as having COVID, C, if a pupil does go for a PCR test, what happens whilst he or she is awaiting for the result? D, if a parent wishes to keep their child at home as there is COVID in their house and prior to any PCR test result being received, how is that absence to be marked by the school? Is it to be classed as authorised or unauthorised absence? Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the question. And absolutely, we are experiencing an uplift in the number of cases in our schools. We've currently got in excess of 800 positive cases of children in school across about 66 schools. So clearly COVID is still out there in the community, and I will take this opportunity, of course, to emphasise the need for us all to exercise caution, but I'm sure you don't need me to say that. It's disappointing, I think, with the suggestion that there is conflicting advice going out there. Clearly what we are doing is trying to keep our advice up to date and live, and to change and adapt with the circumstances that we find ourselves in. We've been very clear with our schools about that advice, and we communicate with our schools regularly, daily if necessary, as that advice changes according to the circumstances we find ourselves in. But to answer the questions directly, and I'm aware that again members have had this response. So a member of your household has been diagnosed with COVID. We have indeed changed that advice of late, and that was of course in collaboration with our Director of Public Health, who does have the authority to vary from a national advice. So until the week of the 27th of September, Shropshire Council had been following the national guidance, which states that individuals are not required to self-isolate if they live in the same household as someone with COVID-19 and they are below the age of 18 years and 6 months. The guidance also states that individuals, including children, are encouraged to get a PCR test and should continue to attend school as normal and only self-isolate following a positive test result. In some cases, parents have been advised to keep children at home while awaiting the PCR test in exceptional circumstances, such as if the child or close contact is clinically extremely vulnerable. So I've said that we've updated the guidance, and the guidance updated on the week of the 27th stated that pupils who have a household contact who has tested positive should have a positive through a PCR test, should be recommended to take the PCR test and not attend school while awaiting the result. Absence should be coded as X, which is COVID-related absence. Shall I go on to B?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. So B, which is a brother or sister has been diagnosed as having COVID, and the response I've given previously covers that, and the same advice applies, unless the sibling lives in a different household. Question C, if the pupil does go for a PCR test, what happens while he or she is waiting for the result? The advice is if the pupil has a household contact who has COVID, then the pupil should now remain at home whilst waiting for the PCR result. Many pupils are recommended to have PCR tests as a precautionary measure due to the COVID cases within their class group. And in these cases, pupils can continue to attend school while awaiting results based on the national guidance. And question D, if a parent wishes to keep their child at home as there is COVID in their house and prior to any PCR test results being received, how is that absence to be marked by the school? So the local guidance introduced on the 28th of September, which is just a couple of days or so ago, was it yesterday?
Yes.
Actually, goodness, states that pupils being absent while awaiting the PCR test result due to a household case of COVID should be coded as X. This is a code for a COVID-related absence and is classed as an authorised absence. That guidance has been issued to all schools this week.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. As a supplementary, can I say a big thank you for that? I think everybody thinks schools have been closed for too long. Children need to be in school, especially primary children, which is where my question was coming from, primary schools. So thank you for that. And a school has sent me the information that they received yesterday from yourself, so thank you for that. But could I ask that the information be sent round, the advice that's been sent round schools, be sent round to all elected members? I think it's important that elected members are aware of the advice that Shropshire Council is giving, because parents will be talking and there is rumours and different ways of interpreting it. So I think members need to be at the forefront to actually put forward to keep COVID under control, to bring it back down. I note the results of last week when it states, as Karen has just said, about the increasing numbers in the schools. We need to kill that virus. We need to stop it, and the only way is to really follow the advice that's just been given. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Evans.
Sure.
That's okay.
And perhaps I could just add
Yes,
to that. I mean, thank you, Roger. And as I say, you know, we are making dynamic changes according to the circumstances that we find ourselves in, both nationally and locally. And what I can say further to that is that we, like you, want children to be in school, but we do want to keep our communities as safe as possible. We have agreed, or that it has been agreed at a regional level, that a 2-day circuit break, so i.e. closure of schools for 2 days, to disrupt transmission can be considered, and I emphasise that, considered, with one of the following criteria, and that is that either 30% of a class are confirmed positive through PCR tests, or 15% of a school are confirmed positive through PCR tests. And if a school reaches either of those thresholds, then they should discuss that option with our public health department and our director and her team before a final decision is made, and they'll obviously give appropriate advice. But that advice has also gone out to schools for that possibility. We like you want to make sure that we try to you know, break the cycle if we possibly can, whilst at the same time keeping children for the maximum of time in school.
Yes, Councillor Hardy.
That's finished. Finish, Roger.
Yes, fine.
Just and this is not a moan, it's just a request that we receive our replies to questions 24 hours before. This is the first time I've seen the reply to my question, and then I have to make a supplementary. So I'm just wondering if it, well, Karen won't be here, will she? But 24 hours before.
I think, I mean, I'll turn to Daniel here, but some of the questions we have literally only had within the past 24 hours or so. So we've turned them around really, really quickly in order to get them responses back to you. So
Thank you. But
if we don't get them, you know, within 24 hours, we can't.
Mine was
respond
sent
to them.
2 weeks ago.
I think I think at the heart of this at the moment is that we are just really short-staffed within community services. The great news about that though going forward is that I know they've recruited a new officer, Ashley, who will take responsibility for the overall management of this committee going forward. I met with Ashley on Friday and she strikes me as just the ticket and just the time this committee needs. So I expect the administration will be a little sharper. At the moment, what we tend to do is we tend to send the questions out and the day before we'll collect the responses rather than doing it on a bit by bit basis. It's just one of those little efficiencies you do when you've got a lot on your plate. But I expect when Ashley's there, she'll have a bit more time to devote this. So I think the quality of the administration will improve.
Thank you, Tony.
Chair, perhaps if I could come in.
Yes, please.
Obviously, I'm not going to be here for too much longer, but like council, it may be worth agreeing a standard time for when questions are in advance, at least 5 working days in advance of the scrutiny, which gives officers time. Clearly, on Councillor Pardy, on your question, one of the officers was on annual leave until Monday, and we needed her input before we finalise the response.
No problem. Thank you.
So, Kirsty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to point out, I was in a meeting yesterday with maintained head teachers and 2 school forums, how excellent the communication has been, and I'd like to note that and thank Steve Compton for his really impressive work. It hasn't been in every county. We have been really quite pioneering in this. As Karen said, sometimes it's daily information to schools. And it's not just about COVID, but it's also about health and well-being, safeguarding, even school transport. So, you know, can we please note the hard work that he has done to make us all absolutely current in this? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Broomall. Right hand side.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question about Stepping Stones project. I understand that the project is an important part of the Children's Services programme, improving the quality of care of such as vulnerable children, as well as making much needed cost savings. Could the portfolio holder give us an update, reporting on progress in achieving the project's goals over the last few months?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councillor, for your question. We are only in very early stages. The project went live 12th of July, so I will try and update you all I can in that time. There's a presentation that's going to be shared with everybody here today as well. So the recruitment has been successful. The planning consent for the first hub was passed in June, and contractors are on site 20th of September, so we really are very current. I think, you know, this has been a success, and we know that through the multi-agency hub that we're meeting weekly and the referrals into this, that the joint approach working with, like first meeting was housing, there's going to be education, police, people involved, that it is on track, which is fantastic. There was a campaign for foster care recruitment. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. So the targets have been met. It's really important to note here that the Stepping Stones tracker that's been developed will continue to monitor the work that's being done and started, and you know, we can certainly keep scrutiny updated on the progress. We are looking at partnership agencies to come on board with the governance and the meetings. And once again, I'd like to praise Nick, my deputy, because he's been really involved with this, obviously before my time as portfolio holder as well. I think it's really tying in nicely with the council's vision for a family-focused approach, early help, and doing everything we can to hear the voice of the child and support the family. Thank you.
Have a supplementary?
okay, once.
Yes.
Just like, sorry, Daniel, who's screwing the officer on camera at the moment. Just to let you know that we've scheduled a briefing on stepping stones for all elected members in January next year, date to be confirmed. You may remember you asked for this to come to your work programme, so at the moment it's provisionally down for you to consider at your January meeting.
Okay. You happy with that? Yeah. Okay. Mr. Wilson, I believe it's over to you. Mr. Phil Wilson, our Service Delivery Manager for Learning and Skills.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon, colleagues. This paper is on school place planning in Shropshire, so hopefully you've had sight of the paper. Can I firstly take the opportunity to thank those committee members who were able to attend the development session I had last Tuesday. The whole purpose of that was really to give the members of this committee an overview in terms of school place planning process, so that we didn't get bogged down in detail through this paper. We covered a wide range of aspects, including the national and local context, forecasting and data information sources. We looked at the catchment areas and the links to the admissions process. We also looked at the impact of housing and the pupil yield. We also looked at how the school place planning programme was funded. So again, I won't be going through detail in this report. This report is hopefully moving on from that, but giving a baseline of understanding across the membership of the committee. Again, though, there's no reason why we won't draw on that session in terms of the discussion that will presumably follow this brief introduction. My understanding from Daniel is that the slides presentation is available to all members. So these are posted on the portal, so all members will be able to see that. So again, let's hope that work is groundwork will help to inform the discussion that we'll have later on. The paper's been split into effectively two parts. The first part is focusing on the current school place planning programme, which is still live, and it's based on work that was initiated back in late 2015. And so what I'd look to be doing in the paper is to brief members on what has happened and is happening now. The second part of the paper then really looks forward to the work that will need to be undertaken once the Shropshire local plan is adopted, hopefully in next summer in July 2022. So again, just beginning to pave the way for the work that will be done. And I really personally want to make sure that People Overview is very much involved in that process, that engagement exercise that will happen at the end of next year and early 2023. So if I could first of all look just at the first part of the report is the current school place planning programme. So we go back to late 2015 and early 2016, when the major exercise was undertaken by officers to look at the whole landscape of education provision across Shropshire, every school in every community across the whole county. But that was drawing heavily on the local plan through to 2026. So members will be very familiar with the local plan. So again, it wasn't so much equal to where, it's not always about where the growth is happening. You also need to recognise when you look at the local plan, there's not spots, if you will, in a county where there is no development. And so we need to look at the counter side of the school place planning process insofar as where we have schools that are not filling up with pupils and that perhaps are losing pupils. So we need to take that in the context of our overall school organisation planning. And again, the reason why the housing is significant, and that has been significant in recent years, is because that is a trigger for why we need to expand provision. We haven't got a great deal of natural growth of pupil numbers in Shropshire just from the communities who already live here. So the driver, and it certainly has been noticeable in the last 5 to 10 years, is coming from housing development. That is the main push, and that's why we've seen a level of expansion of our school places is primarily due to housing development. So following that introductory exercise, we have a range of engagement events across the county with key stakeholders. That was primarily senior school leaders and local members in those communities. The data had indicated there were 5 areas, so we had 5 area meetings, engagement events. That was at Shifnal, Osler Street, Market Trade, Whitchurch and Shrewsbury. And there may be members in this room who had participated in those engagement events. That then was the trigger for a series of, over the next few years, that led to detailed discussions at the individual school level. for those schools who were the ones that were going to have to deal with increased demand for provision. And so again, a lot of detailed conversations and meetings with individual schools and agreeing how best we were to deliver that provision in those areas. It's important to understand that this programme isn't just about banging on another couple of class spaces onto a school. The exercise is quite looking at what their existing provision is like, what they're currently using in their school. So what we spent quite a little bit of time with the expansion of housing development, first protocol is we filled up surplus places in a number of our schools. And in the school that had surplus places, they may have had a former classroom that they put over to general purposes use and all those sorts of things. So clearly, the processes go through all of the options in terms of how we deliver that expanded provision. And in some instances, it was just a case of bringing a former classroom back into use. So again, always in mind to the costs and the benefit of how we would deliver that. They're not always looking to spend on new build when there are other ways of delivering that additional provision within schools. So again, a lot of work there. We also, as part of that programme, flushed out, as it had a profile, we had other schools coming about wanting to expand. So we had requests from a number of schools who I would classify perhaps as popular schools, who oversubscribed, a lot of interest in there. But what this, we have to be very, very careful with this, because in most of the cases, if not all of the cases, when we unpicked what these schools, why they were popular, they were drawing children from outside their catchment areas. And that's a very, very, an area that we need to be very, very careful with, because this can and has been demonstrated could have a negative impact on neighbouring schools who would lose their pupils who will go into the expanded school. And this can have a detrimental effect on their education and financial viability. So all I'm really trying to describe here is this isn't just we need expanding, they're expanding on a couple of classes. This is about, there's a whole process that goes on, a whole dialogue and debate and discussion with our schools community. Appended to the report, you'll see a summary of the programme that actually played out after all those iterations, all those discussions, all of those projects that didn't materialise. What you've got in the appendix are the ones that went forward in school place planning terms. And so I effectively summarise that of the 8 completed projects up to January 2020, the programme has delivered 17 new class spaces and providing school places for over 500 children. We've got a couple of live projects. The live project at Horman Federation on Featherbed Lane will deliver a whole new form of entry for that school. So they'll go for both the infant school and the junior school, will go from 3 forms of entry to 4 forms of entry. That means we'll have provision for an additional 210 pupils in the north of Shrewsbury. The new school in Broad Brook, again, will deliver the same level of provision. It'll be 7 classes in the initial phase. For that school, we're building a 2-form entry hub. And so we're only building 1 form of entry for teaching, but at a later date, as and when demand requires, we will be able to add on another additional teaching block. So during the 2030s, that school will be able to accommodate up to 420 children. So hopefully that will be able to meet the demand for places coming out of the developments that are both existingly in the plan, but will emerge from the new local plan. The new 5-class block at Neil Brace will help to meet the forecast demand for secondary places during the current plan period up to 2026. Key to all of this is working with our key partners and stakeholders in the principle, and so the approaches throughout this has been about the right number of places in the right locations at the right time. And I believe, working with a group of partners and the stakeholders, I believe that we have done this. Again, as I said, the number of places that we've added in Shropshire, we haven't seen those levels of additional places for many, many years. There's much to celebrate, I believe, in the provision in the last 5 to 6 years. And we've still got some major projects, larger projects, and the ones that are in Shrewsbury at the moment are set to deliver in the next couple of years. And I'd like to take the opportunity to credit the success of the programme goes down to a large number of colleagues, stakeholders and members who've contributed to this, as well as we're very fortunate to have a number of quality contractors in county who deliver quality outcomes in terms of the build that we're getting. We're very happy with what we've got. I just want to draw the members' attention to, beyond our programme, other things have happened in that period, and so it's just important that members are aware of that. So in paragraph 6.6, I refer to the government's new programme, national programme, the school rebuilding programme. Now, this is a 10-year programme. It's about investing in what they classify as the most underdeveloped school provision that we've got, where the schools are in the worst possible condition and they need addressing quite quickly. We're fortunate. If you think there's 100 schools in phase 1 and 2, Shropshire's got 2. That's either something to celebrate, we've got 2, or something to say, well, actually, we've got 2 of our schools that appeared on the top of the government's agenda. But we will take it as it is, but clearly that includes significant capital investment. So Belvedere School is going to be completely rebuilt. That programme's well underway. They're in phase 1. And the other school that's in the programme now is Shifnal St Andrews, which is coming on board. So we're just starting that. That'll either be a major refurbishment or even a complete rebuild. We're at early stages on that. The coming months will tell us what to do. But again, fully funded through the department. And so we're talking of possibly 10 to 15 million across the 2 schools being invested in Shropshire provision. So I think we want to celebrate that and applaud that. The other thing that's outside of this then is the new special school in Bowbrook. That wasn't part of our programme, though just to acknowledge that whenever we're looking at provision, we have to be mindful of the SEND provision in these new schools. We're building expansions here that we make proper and appropriate provision for the SEND pupils who we want to keep in mainstream schools as well. But we've got the new schools, so that was part of the bidding process. And so that was part of the government's free school programme. So we bid and secured that funding. So again, we will have a free school SEND special school built in Bowbrook, funded by the government for up to 120 pupils. So again, and something else to celebrate in terms of what we've been doing over the last 5 years in school-based planning terms. If I can now just perhaps briefly turn to the future. So we'll talk about the period beyond the life of the current programme, which runs through to 2026. We're always going to review this, and this time would have been the time we would have reviewed it. The local plan has slipped in terms of the time scale in which it was adopted. So if that had been adopted earlier, which perhaps we would have expected it pre-pandemic, we would already have completed and probably be well underway with the review. But clearly, with the delay in the plan being formalised and formally adopted, that work has yet to get underway. But now we've got a deadline on that, so we can start to begin to plan that. In paragraph 6.7, I just give an indication of the reference of the key areas in which new dwellings will be delivered, and certainly sitting in school-based planning, we will look at the impact on the schools in those communities. But again, we've already been in conversations. We get our foot in the door as soon as we know some of this stuff is going on, particularly with the strategic sites. And Councillor Wild will be very familiar in terms of the work that we do in Iron Bridge. Certainly we've been involved in very early conversations regarding Iron Bridge Power Station. And even though that has just gone through planning, I know it's had a little bit of a journey, but it's been through planning. But education officers were talking with the developer and planning colleagues for the last 2 years. And that approval does include funding earmarked for a new school in the development area, as well as provision for potential expansion of secondary provision at Williambrook School. So the message I just want to give to members is that education colleagues are very early involved in these discussions. We are getting our points across in terms of the requirement for statutory provision regarding school places. We're bringing along the data to back that up. So again, just to assure colleagues that we are making sure that we are at the table, if you will, and making the case for education provision. Preparatory work is already underway on this ahead of the formal adoption. So we want to get in early so that when the plan's adopted, we can then start the engagement events with school leaders, local members and other stakeholders. So we can get that underway towards the end of 2023. What I would just like to touch on, and a dimension that hopefully will give us in this window of time we have between then and now, is really in terms of the government agenda around academisation. That will have a bearing on this programme, because again, as I presented at the development session, at this moment in time, the local authorities have statutory responsibilities for the sufficiency of school places, but we don't have any legal powers to enforce. We can't impose school places on academies as the legislation stands. So we will watch with interest as the discussion and the way forward in terms of academisation progresses. Context is really in terms of how they expect and anticipate school-based planning will be facilitated and delivered by local authorities if we move to a situation where 100% of our schools are academies. So again, we need to see how that plays out, and hopefully we'll have opportunity to contribute to the debate and the discussions about how that actually is formalised. Whether that results in primary legislation giving authorities power to do this, or I don't know. So we will just have to watch this space. But that will inform how we progress the planning, and the review will reflect on where we are in national contextual terms and where the academisation agenda fits into the programme work that we will, at this moment in time, have responsibility for, but who knows, that may shift. We'll have to wait and see what the government direction is on that. What I would say though is I'm not concerned at this moment, because we've got very good relationships with our schools, and if you look at the schools appended to this, half of those schools are academies. And I would say at no point in our discussions with those have we come across any incidents where we haven't had 100% cooperation from those organisations to work with us and to deliver the best outcomes for our young people. So it's not an issue that we face in Shropshire. I'm sure from speaking to West Midlands colleagues, they do have more confrontation than we do. But we have got good relationships, and long may that continue. But there may come a day when we do a bit of legal force if we do come across obstacles to delivering our statutory responsibility as they currently stand. As I said, I really, really want the school people overview committee to be part of that process. I want them to be part of that engagement process, to have early sight of that review and contribute to that as an engagement event, and be involved in that very much. So I would very much welcome the opportunity to bring back that review to this forum for considered discussion at a later date. Probably, I'm anticipating we can perhaps look to plan for something in early 2023. Okay, that was a long introduction, so apologies, but hopefully that in terms of where we are. Thank you,
Thank you, John. Councillor Wild. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wild, please.
Thank you. So I have to say the development session the other day was really good. I don't know how many members went, but I would say that it would be quite important for all members to listen to it. And I think the one thing that came out of it for me was communicating that sometimes the overwhelming prospect of applying for a school for parents. You know, I mean, we just, you know, and we talked about that a little bit, and they are actually going to look at ways to try and explain even more clearly to parents about applying for primary and secondary school, because I think people get overwhelmed. I think that's, you know, although there's information there, and so we talked about that. So that's what I thought was really good about it, because actually we're working together to try and develop something that is really easy, you know, for people to understand. So maybe a little video or something on there.
Thank you, Councillor Wild. What I would say is that I've been already talking to Daniel that we delivered a school place session. I would commend that actually we deal with admissions. We do a similar thing around admissions. Carol Snedden could deliver a very effective development session showing the connections between school place planning and admissions are very, very strongly connected. And I would welcome the opportunity for a development session for members around the admissions. Not just to deal with school place planning, there are other things. When Carol gets into the summer and we get into appeal session, the number of messages and communications you get from members, I think there's a massive benefit, not just in school place planning terms, but also just in terms of the whole admissions arena, because it's statutory. There is little wriggle room on this. There's a statutory process here. Once you get into the appeals, there is no member speaking up on behalf of a parent. It carries absolutely no weight. It's an independent appeals process. So I would welcome the opportunity, and as I say, we're already talking down at a development session around the admissions process, with a subset of that presentation being the connection to school place planning. I think, particularly with a new membership of the administration and membership of councillors following the May elections, I think there's a lot of benefit in getting that development in early, so that'll inform everybody going forward.
Can I just add something there? I think that's great. I think the more people that know, the better. And I hopefully we can deliver some of this training to the schools, and hopefully the parents as well have a better understanding, because sometimes, you know, parents think they only have to put one school, you know, and so I just think the more we can get the message out there, the easier we make it for them to understand.
And it's those sorts of things actually, I mean, we can give you a whole list of the primary reasons why they get to the way they do, why they end up in your inbox. It's because they've not followed the rules.
They've not filled in the form correctly.
Precisely.
And you know, it saves a lot of heartache. So
Absolutely.
actually, if we all work together, that is one of the strongest
Absolutely.
messages.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And thank you very much for your presentation today and last week. It was really good.
Thank you very much.
Here, here, having from the school governor, my goodness. We need that message getting out. So Daniel, can you organise, please? Thank you. Councillor Aldcroft.
Yes, very interesting, and it's probably off-centre a little bit, but I'd just like to know, when you're looking at school expansions, increases in numbers, have you taken into account recreation space for that increase? I know you're concentrating on the buildings, but the recreation space for the kids when they get there.
Whole range of considerations really, and again it's interesting that when we went through, Councillor Wild was familiar with this, when we try and secure SIL funding from this, the discussions we had around the cost of some of this, because it's not always about the classroom with its walls and the ceiling and the floor. Very often it's about the space around it, the additional toilet provision, the flow of the school and the additional work that's required. A lot of it's dictated by the footprint of the school. So if they can't expand out for the recreational space, we can only work with what we've got. If they have generously space, then we can accommodate that, perhaps hopefully at not additional cost. We also have regulations, what are called BB 103. There are regulations, government stipulates how much you should require for the numbers of pupils, the amount of space you require, the number of toilets. So there are kind of frameworks in which there are expectations of what we were required to deliver. But if the footprint isn't big enough in the first place, you do your very best to accommodate BB 103. But if you can't expand and purchase a little bit of land adjacent to the school, then you can't always deliver that. So we're always conscious of the impact that has on the schools. And if that one class on a school of the school we've got 13 classes doesn't make a great deal of a difference, but a whole year group, if you will, 7 classes onto a school does have a significant impact. So we take all those factors in consideration, but it is really on a case-by-case basis based on the individual school circumstance. But absolutely, it's about accommodating whatever that young people require. In a 21st century school, to deliver the best educational outcomes, we'll do whatever we can within the scope of the footprint of the school and the existing building to deliver the best provision for our young people. Thank you.
Councillor Portman.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Phil, for that really helpful presentation. You mentioned schools accepting pupils from out of catchment area and the impact on neighbouring schools when that occurs. Is there an admissions criteria for out of area admissions, and does the local admissions forum get involved, and what exactly is the remit of that forum?
Okay, the admissions process is that there's a hierarchy of responsibilities, so that you work on a list, and it's also important, actually it's quite important to remember that actually Shropshire Council is the admissions authority for the maintained schools. Not all of them, we're not the admissions authority for aided schools and foundation schools, but we're not the admissions authority for academies. So again, they can dictate the criteria by which they assess applications. In area will always be top of the list. So the only reason why a school would be able to take out of area cases is where they've got capacity to do that. The priority will always be the in-area pupils. So again, if you looked at any admissions policy for any school, you will see the criteria, but also high up there you will see special educational needs, you'll see looked after children, you'll see forces children. So there's some of those. So all of the Shropshire maintained schools have the same admissions criteria. We come every January to Cabinet to get the admissions proposals going forward approved. So that process is clear. So again, I would commend members to familiarise themselves with that. But again, maybe that's part of the admissions development session. We can touch on the admissions process, those criteria, how they work, where we have responsibility, where academies have responsibility, where academies perhaps have been flexing that to change it. But what I would say, they can't change it without consultation, and the council is a consultee. And if we find they're changing criteria that compromises either our school-based planning responsibilities, we will challenge. I've got an example. Several years ago, one of our schools was looking to reduce their admissions number. But if they'd have done that, we would have had to expand provision elsewhere to deliver the places required. So we challenged it. They took us to the Ombudsman, and the Ombudsman found to the authority. So we have that as responsibility and ability to challenge where it's not in the best interest, given our strategic responsibilities for school-based planning and other aspects of education. The Local Admissions Forum is a forum that discusses all of these issues around admissions. They look at the numbers, how things are working out. So we have cross-party representation on Local Admissions Forum, and Councillor Evans is a member of that forum. So they have an overview that's represented. We have diocesan representative, we have senior school leader representation on a Local Admissions Forum. So again, it's just another forum, if you will, to just checks and balances within the system to make sure that everything's being managed. It's myself and Carol Snedden as a missions manager to run ideas and proposals past them in the first instance before we take them forward. So Councillor Evans may well be able to comment on how effectively that works. I think it works very effectively, independently chaired, and I think it keeps an eye in terms of the admissions process and how that managed. But we do bring school-based planning considerations into that forum as well.
Councillor Evans?
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak, although I'm not a member of this scrutiny committee, but thank you. Yes, I do sit on the Local Admissions Forum, and if I can look at Shrewsbury, essentially, although I don't live in the Shrewsbury catchment area, I have raised questions about admissions within Shrewsbury, and I can quote two examples, if you wish, which I've raised before with officers. 3 years ago, I had a lady who was moving from Ford into near Millbrae School mid-year, and she had a child who needed to go to a secondary school, and having no transport, asked for that child to go into either primary or meal. She couldn't. She was offered a place in North Shrewsbury. That child to get to that school, which was the only place there was a vacancy, and this is where I'm coming from about school-based planning, needed 2 bus journeys to it. She couldn't afford it. There was no transport assistance with transport offered because of the distances involved, precluded them applying to the authority for help in getting to that school. So school-based planning in Shrewsbury, I have raised several times for it. There is also a primary school which wanted a nursery provision and was stopped even though it had room at that school because of the likely need in the future of increasing numbers because of the builders in Shrewsbury. So there are problems. I don't think it's all going to be met by the increase in primary offer around Shrewsbury and the future secondary, but having the number of vacancies in North Shrewsbury does not help with the building programme that's going on in South. And I know the building is going on in Mayo, but I do raise the query about the availability of school places in Shrewsbury, which is a peculiar catchment area, because there is the 4 secondary schools, all have a common catchment area, which is different to the rest of Shropshire. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Wyatt?
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say, in relation to Roger's question, really, I mean, I think we need to wait until we've had the next development session, really, to discuss that, because we've got, you know, we can't have the debate now. I think it's better if we have the development session first.
Yeah, I would concur on that, because I mean, a lot of this is around the admissions process. To be honest with you, in-year admissions is very different to transfer at either at reception or transfer at year 7. Very, very different in-year. with a greater suspect, any person can move into community with a popular school, and if that school is full, that school is full, end of. All we can do is work to look at alternative options. And I think part of what I'd like to tease out from the admissions process is parents have a right to express a preference for a school where they're available. However, that does not give a right to choose a school. So we need to understand the differential, but we can tease that out through the development session to clearly understand, so that members understand that. There's a right to express a preference and there's not a right to choose. Otherwise, an illustration, if a popular school was popular, every parent said, I wanted to go there, they moved into Shrewsbury, we would have had to expand the school on that premise alone. And where would those children come from? They come from the other schools. So it's not a basis on which you can manage school-based planning effectively and efficiently. In here is always a challenge, and as I say, popular schools will fill up, and if someone comes and wants to join year 8 mid-year, there can be no guarantees whatsoever that we can do that, but all we can do as officers and the school community is to find the very next place. But if they can't get into their catchment school, then that's when transport is supported. So there's other ways we can support that family for transport. But again, as Councillor Wilde says, we can pick up perhaps in more detail at the development session around admissions.
And that'll be a good help for members too, especially new members that have not been aware of how things work. Councillor Horton?
Sorry, Chair, if I may come back. Thanks for the answer, Phil, but does that apply in, the schools fall in a rural area, for example, where the next school could be 15 or 20 miles away? Is there any flexibility?
If a school in a rural community is at capacity and in-area demand is such, yes, if a child can't get into their catchment school for whatever reason, the responsibility is that the council will meet transport costs for children to an out of catchment area school. 2 miles is the threshold for primary children, 3 miles is for secondary age children. So in those instances, if that child is unable, and again there may be a whole raft of reasons why that's not possible, we have statutory responsibility to pick up the transport costs for that child to the next nearest school. But if they elected to go halfway across the county, then we might need to say actually a reasonable offer for another place is closer to. So because again, the authority is spending the best part of £13 million transporting our young people around. So again, maybe that's another discussion for another day about homeschool transport. Maybe that's another development session down the line. But we are spending significant sums on transporting our young people. A good proportion of that is for special education needs. So again, maybe another discussion for another day.
That was a bit shocking.
It's big money.
Councillor Evans? Oh, sorry, Ruth, do you want to come back?
Chair, if I may, just a final question on that. I mean, Bishop's Castle particularly, pupils do come in from Wales. What's the sort of situation there if they're taking places where a doctor child might need that place? I mean, I appreciate you can't stop a child's education mid-year, but what about the transport costs? What happens there?
Well, again, we are not the local education authority for children who live in Wales. So again, if they elect and they can get into that school, and again, I know Bishop's Castle it needs filling up, and we need that school to be full. But again, their admissions process would prioritise in-area children. The reason why we're taking out-of-area children is because they can and they've got space. But we don't have the statutory responsibility for paying the transport costs of children whose parents elect to choose their child to be educated in an English school.
Chair, perhaps if I could come in. If I could come in, I was going to raise that issue around in-area. It's a dynamic thing and it changes over time, and we get caught up sometimes with schools being popular and schools being unpopular. And I decided not to, because I thought we could unpack it, through the development session. But as Phil said, what we need to do is to educate Shropshire children where they need to be educated. But we do have to do, as Phil says, when schools are full, they're full, or where there's capacity, there's capacity. But in circumstances where, for example, a Shropshire child might be displaced because the school is full from somebody from over the border, that will take time, but we will as a rule push people when schools are full and we're taking children from out of the catchment area, that they will start to push back over time. The detail we can cover, I'm sure, in the development session.
Thank you.
You, Roger, and then
Thank you, Chairman. I recognise the difficulties officers have and Shropshire Council has, and the difficulties that were just enumerated by the officers. But Shrewsbury is a particular case, and it's different to the rest of the county for those who aren't aware of it. But in Shrewsbury, there are 4 secondary schools, and they share a common catchment area of Shrewsbury, whereas the rest of the county, each secondary school has a particular catchment area attached to that school. So in Shrewsbury, if one school is full, you are still in the catchment area of another school. So there is no assistance given or anything like that. And maybe when this session comes about, that can be addressed, because that does give not peculiar, but distinct problems because of the building programme that is going on in South Shrewsbury. Vacancies, or the majority of vacancies at secondary schools are in North Shrewsbury. So there is a difficulty in the Shrewsbury catchment area, which involves those 4 schools. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Councillor Evans, if I could perhaps just pick up on what Karen's really said, is over time that will see the displacement in that. So there'll always be a case of the nearest children to that school. While it's one catchment area, there's still the children closest to the schools in the west of Shrewsbury will be the first on the list to get through. So at this moment in time, over the years when there were some vacancies there may be some children from other parts of Shrewsbury who may have gone in, and possibly even from out of Shrewsbury got in. But as we move forward, you will see a gradual displacement of the children who would have got in 2 years ago, 3 years into that school, will not get into that school because the priority was given to the children in the location of the school. So you need to see these as a longitudinal exercise and see how that plays over time. But I would anticipate in the coming years that those children, X% of children got into primary meal basis, as an example, from the other side, north of Shrewsbury and the east of Shrewsbury, will not be able to get into those schools because from the house to the front door of the school, the children who have the closest to that will get in as a priority in year 7 in particular. So, but again, development session will teach all that, but actually when we get to the review exercise, again, we can have those conversations about Shrewsbury, particularly as Roger says, as a different example to a lot of many other areas. But again, we've got 2 schools in Bridgenorth, so there'll be a similar conversation about how we deal with 2 secondaries in Bridgenorth.
It's very complicated.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask for clarity on if a child moves from the south of the county up to Shrewsbury, would they be, so if they've moved house and they're then in the catchment area of the Shrewsbury school, would they then be allocated a place within Shrewsbury, or would they? No, if it's a mid-year transfer, then again they would approach schools themselves, because again the Shropshire Council used to be responsible for in-year admissions. The schools now manage that, bearing in mind the exception of one secondary school, they are all their own admissions authorities. So no, and this is really why it's important that we have this conversation with members, so that when they get these inquiries, but also as Councillor Wilde said, we make it clear to parents how the system works. But there can be no expectation that because you moved into that area and the most popular school in the county just happens to be around the corner from you, does not guarantee your child will get into that. We have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Clearly, our admissions team will help wherever they can. But as I say, if there isn't a place in that school for that year group, for that child at that time, then we will look at the alternatives within the area. But there can be no guarantees of a place in the school adjacent to the house if they move into that area, mid-year in particular.
So in the case of what we just said, the school will make the decision initially.
Well, they are the admissions authority, so again, those conversations, but the admissions team of Shropshire Council will support that process as well as far as we're able to. But again, if there's a particular case, then please don't hesitate to contact myself or Carol Snedden, and we can deal with any individual cases just to clarify. Because as I say, I'm talking in very general terms, but if you look at some of the, if the child's got SEND or it's a forces child, there's other factors in play that may well strengthen their position. So if there is a particular case that any councillor's got, then which I think might be an exceptional, then we can support that case.
But for anybody that's thinking of moving with children, their first point of contact.
They need to be talking about the school that their child wants to go to. Yes.
Yeah. That makes sense for everybody. you're the next one in line that they're going to come wanting your help. So it helps if you know what the situation is. Any more questions, please? No? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. After the sessions of the day and the next one coming, we'll all know where we're going at. And as Claire said, I encourage all other members to listen to that as well, because it affects all of us. We've all got schools in our area. Okay. Now, the next one was going to be school exclusion, and unfortunately, Christine Kerry, that's the girl's name, has been taken poorly. So I'm going to suggest that we defer the session, because we actually do need her here to talk to. That's all right. Okay, all right, Tanya. She's looking a bit lost and lonely there. Okay, the work programme, Daniel, please.
Thank you, Chair. Daniel Webb, Overview Scrutiny Officer. Just bear with me 1 moment for a bit conflict. As the Chair's just informed us, regrettably Chris Kelly can't attend today, so we propose to defer that item to November. That creates quite a busy meeting in November. You've asked to look at the corporate parenting panel, and we will bring that into place. And we're also due to for an update on progress of the written statement of action following the 2020 CQC inspection of ourselves and the CCG with regards to children with special education need or disability. With that in mind, we propose that a piece of work looking at the virtual school head be delayed through to January, when we will also look at the Stepping Stones project, as alluded to earlier in the meeting. We also, because the Stepping Stones is such a major project, it's such an important project at Shropshire Council, we propose to hold a briefing session for all elected members at some point in early January, date to be confirmed. This will set us up very nicely to look at 2 items early in the new year, either in January or March. I think it's probably a little early to say just now what date that will be, to look at a return of scrutiny of the West Mercia Youth Justice Service and an update on our own provisions for youth services and those delegated through to town and parish councils. Some of you have also asked for an update on pupil attainment, particularly in closing the gap between children from a deprived background and those who aren't. Following advice from officers, we propose that we leave that for a while to let the disruption caused by the pandemic settle down and to provide a bit more meaningful data going forward on that. So I propose at the moment to delay that item until March. And then finally, as you agreed earlier, there will be a briefing session in March on school admissions delivered by Carol Smith. I think that's everything from me so far. I leave it to the committee to respond and make any suggestions as they see fit. Thank you.
Anybody have any? Yes, Councillor Pardy?
I don't think we disagree with Daniel, because Daniel knows what he's doing, but I did ask at one time, well, not the last meeting I think, if we could discuss TMBSS, because there's a lot of people don't know what TMBSS is, and Daniel, I'm looking forward to the middle of next year. I understand your problems, but it would maybe an idea to invite the head teacher in to discuss TMBSS and what he does and what they do there, because there are quite a few success stories. If anybody wants to know, TMBSS is basically a safety net for children that are excluded and can't get into any other schools. But he does have a problem with not having the finances or the resources to take on every child. There's about 15, 16 knocking around that are not in TMBSS. But besides all the political stuff, it would be interesting for people to learn about TMBSS and the services it gives.
Sorry.
Sorry, perhaps if I could just again clarify the role of TMBSS. It is not exclusively for children who are excluded from school. It's children who can't attend school for all sorts of reasons. And some of them are part-time there and part-time school. So I didn't want members just to go away with it, the view that it is just around exclusions. It's not. They have a much wider brief than that, but if it's going to come to scrutiny, I'm sure that can be covered.
Therefore, I will.
Yes, I was just going to reinforce what Karen said. I've been there quite a few times, and that's absolutely the case. Sometimes children go there for a couple of days and school for a couple of days. It's brilliant, the staff are superb, it's absolutely fantastic. So I'm sure everyone will be really impressed.
Shouldn't that be good, especially again? We've got quite a few new members, haven't we? That'd be good, good one to do. Anybody? Yes, Councillor Horton.
Thank you, Chair. Given the cost of homeschool transport that Phil's mentioned this afternoon, I think it'd be useful to have an item of scrutiny on that, and include in that post-16 education transport, because in a rural area there are, I understand, locally around where I need people who are unable to afford to go to post-16 education because of transport costs. And I think it'd be useful to explore that until we get some idea of the numbers as to how many people are affected.
So that's a really interesting topic. Just my scrutiny hats on here. The issue of council-provided and community transport is a perennial topic across all committees. I know that the Health and Adult Social Care Committee is very keen to look at patient transport going forward, and the community transport services that the Communities Overview Committee is looking at are very reliant on precisely these homeschool contracts to be sustainable and to cross-subsidise the community services. So I do wonder, rather than sort of placing this on the agenda, do forgive me because I'm thinking off the top of my head here, whether there's some merit in looking at this topic in the round, either in this committee or another committee, or within a separate body such as a working group or a task and finish group. Is this perhaps something, again, I'll talk off the top of my head, perhaps for the chairs to take away and come back with a sort of solution or a proposal?
That'd be all right. Yeah. You put that on the list then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll report back.
Yeah. Okay. Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. As an long-standing member on this committee, maybe, I don't know about Claire, but one of the longest members here, I was reminded by the chair early on today that today is Karen's last meeting virtually. Certainly the session here, and I have pressed Karen. We have had discussions, heated discussions, depth discussions, but I've always respected that Karen has the same ideal as I do about the children of Shropshire. We want the best, and I congratulate Karen that during her stay, even though the children in Shropshire are not as well funded in their education as those down in the South East and London boroughs essentially, we have one of the best systems in Shropshire. And can I say, Karen, you will be missed. I could go on for much more, but it has been appreciated, your tenure of that position, coming from myself. Thank you, and enjoy your time wherever that may be.
Oh, this is from me to you. I don't know what I've done without you these last few years, Karen. Likewise, Roger. Karen and I have had deep discussions, but she's always been there to help me with any problems that came forward, and I'm going to miss you, girl. No, not allowed, but no, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. People know I'm not very good at making speeches, so I'm really not intending to do that because I'll probably start blasting if I did. It's been a huge pleasure and honour and privilege for me to hold this role. What I can say is that I'm absolutely sure that I'm leaving behind staff who are committed, competent, capable, sound, and want to do a great job for Shropshire's children. So I'm hoping that I'm leaving, well, I'm not hoping, I know I'm leaving the organisation of and children's services in good and capable hands. And I'm really pleased that I've been able to pass over that mantle to Tanya. I can't think of anybody better to pick up that role, who will absolutely, I think, drive what we need going forward, and that is that whole family approach. You know, this isn't just about children, it's about families, it's about parents' well-being and our engagement with health. We really need to galvanise that in order to be able to move things forward. So congratulations to Tanya. She knows she's got you know, it's the best job in the council. I'm not going to lie, it's hard, really, really hard, but it's rewarding. When the rewards come in, they are humongous. So I wish Tanya all the very best, and thank you to all of you who've sometimes given me a shed load of grief. You know, sometimes if you might not have wanted to hear what I was saying in the background, but you know, we all see things from a different perspective. We all see things from different ends of the telescope, and collectively we have to balance those views, judgments, ideas to get the best way forward. So again, thank you to all of you and to my officers who've supported me unstintingly for the past 7.5 years. Thank you. And it's alcohol, of course. I've got a bad reputation.
Okay, thank you everybody. I think that draws the meeting to a close, and remind you that the next meeting is on Wednesday the 17th of November at 10 o'clock. Good morning, are we?
All the very best, Karen.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully see you in London.
Yeah.